Speaking of basketball, we've got a lot of craziness. We were talking with Alec Lasley earlier, Zach. This Sunday is, in essence, a mini selection Sunday for the Big Ten because so much is going to be decided on the games that are played on Sunday. There are 6 games on Sunday. So the bulk of the conference in play with, I think, all but one of those games having an impact. The last game was like Wisconsin at Minnesota, which that should not have an impact. But you've got Maryland at Penn State. Maryland's not good on the road. Illinois at Purdue. Nebraska at Iowa, who Iowa will probably win and probably jump up to that number two seed. Of course, Michigan's at Indiana, and Northwestern is at Rutgers. So, man, Indiana, of course, needs a little bit of help. I think they'll get enough help to get that double bye, whether it's the 4th or the 3rd, depends on who does what. But they have to take care of business, and we thought that was a foregone conclusion at home again the other night, but that was far from the case with Iowa. So Michigan right now, I've said this before, and then I recanted, but I think Michigan is currently out of the tournament again. So they're obviously fighting for their life as well. So there's just going to be so many storylines on Sunday, Zach.
Yeah, I mean, I think Indiana's range of possibilities is anywhere from the 2 seed to the 9 seed, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of where they can land. And I think that the likeliest distribution is the 3 or the 4. But that, as you said, that starts with requiring them to win their game against Michigan. And I think that's all obviously Indiana can worry about, and probably all Indiana will worry about. But, I think we could all struggle to remember a season where so little was settled, so deep into the season. Because the thing is that when I say that the range of possibilities for Indiana is anywhere from the 2 to the 9, if I'm not mistaken, that's true of like Northwestern as well. I think it's true of Illinois as well. I think Rutgers ceiling is a little bit lower now, but Rutgers could go anywhere from the 5 to the 9. I think Michigan State even has a narrow chance to be the 2 and can also land as the 9. If you're Indiana, all you worry about is winning. And I think, I wrote this and I still believe it. You shouldn't need gut checks on the last day of February. Having said that, you got one. You gave yourself one with just how badly you performed in that Iowa game. How you recover is, if you're Liverpool, how you pick yourself – or Liverpool, I'm sorry. If you are Indiana, how you pick yourself back up is kind of maybe the one last sort of defining feature of your season. And you're getting a Michigan team that, as you said, is going to be desperate. On the other hand, it's a Michigan team that's going to be tired. Michigan has played into overtime in its last 2 games. I'm assuming the Wolverines went home last night from Illinois, so they'll have gotten in very late from Champaign, like this morning. Then they'll be getting on a plane again tomorrow to fly down to Bloomington. Indiana's already beaten Michigan once. I think there are ways that there are some matchup advantages Michigan can leverage on Indiana, but it's not quite as stark as a team like an Iowa or certainly a team like a Kansas. This is just, if you're Indiana, you got to find your way to winning this game and don't worry about anything else. And then if you get the double bye, great, but win this game, cement yourself as a 4 seed in the NCAA tournament, and then worry about what you got to do in Chicago when you get to Chicago.
Yeah, and then, of course, that is another storyline there, which plays out, of course, leading into the NCAA tournament, which Indiana's in a little bit of a different territory than they have been in, a decade. They did make the tournament last year by the skin of their teeth. That will not be the case this year. And they could possibly, depending on what they do against Michigan and in the Big Ten tournament, get a favorite seeding, whether that's Orlando and Louisville, which would be tremendous for Hoosier fans. But they've just not been in a position like this for a decade to where their their destiny is more in their hands. They've got a little more control about not where they end up, but how their season goes, because they're already at the level of they can go down if they allow it, but they're higher than they've been going into the end of the season in close to a decade, Zach.
And I mean, listen,
2016. I should say 2016. 2016.
Yeah, I think the disappointment for a lot of people, I think, of Tuesday will have been that there was this sense that if Indiana closed the season strong, won its last 2 home games, guaranteed itself that double bye, maybe won the Friday game in the Big Ten tournament, that the committee might bump Indiana up to a 3. It had already seen Indiana as the top 4 seed when we saw the bracket reveal a couple of weeks ago, and all Indiana done since then was strengthen its resume. The loss at Michigan State was acceptable. The win over Illinois was strong. Obviously, the win against Purdue was hugely impressive. One of the best, one of the best singular wins anybody's got in the Big Ten this year. And so it felt like maybe Indiana was pushing up toward the 3 range. And if that was going to be the case, then Indiana could legitimately sort of claim to, maybe get into Columbus, maybe get into the South Regional and play its way through Louisville if it got to the second weekend, all those different kinds of things. And it felt like Indiana, just when it seemed like Indiana was rising, Indiana was surging, Indiana was taking control of the direction of its season at the right time. It felt like Indiana threw a lot of that away. And, at this point, I think a 3 is probably just a little bit out of reach. Maybe if you can make a deep run in the conference tournament. We know the conference tournament doesn't have a huge effect on seeding. It can't. The committee has to have its mind made up about a lot of these teams. But if you get a couple teams on the 3 line that lose early and you play all the way to Sunday, maybe, and you pick up some quality wins along the way, then maybe the committee can tweak 1 or 2 little things, move you up 1 line, move somebody else down 1 line. I think what's a lot more likely is Indiana's on the 4 line, and if they beat, if they beat Michigan on Sunday, I think that is cemented. I think the committee has largely made up its mind about Indiana. But I think you're probably, if you're IU, you are looking at a slightly less, a lower seed and maybe a less favorable path through the tournament in terms of, do you get into the South Regional? Do you get to start in Columbus, or do you have to go somewhere else, et cetera? That being said, Indiana's in comfortably. And there are ways in which this is a really tough team if you have never seen them before on a short turnaround. They're going to get a double-digit seed. I mean, I think they're virtually guaranteed at this point to face a double-digit seed in the first round of the tournament. Their loss profile tells us that sort of team shouldn't give them a lot of trouble, that they are capable of essentially just sort of out-muscling smaller teams, even good smaller conference teams. And the question will be what they look like when they have to, if they can, let's assume they win that game for a moment, what they look like when they get to probably another high major or, a mid-major plus in that round of 32. So it's hard because I understand Indiana fans who are frustrated and angry after the loss Tuesday night and the way it happened. On the other hand, you do have to keep in mind the broader sort of picture, which is that Indiana's had a good season. It set itself up well. And if it can just kind of find its feet here, maybe win Sunday, then maybe get 1 in the Big Ten tournament at least, then the Hoosiers are probably still going to feel good heading into Selection Sunday.